Steve Andreas, Six Blind Elephants, Volume 2, page 20. One of Erickson's clients was a woman who was in intractable pain due to inoperable cancer, and drugs and surgery had not helped. After considerable matching of her doubts and skepticism about hypnosis, Erickson asked her, "Now, tell me, madam, if you saw a hungry tiger in the next room, slowly walking into the room and eyeing you hungrily and licking its chops, how much pain would you feel?" Immediate and extreme danger is a context in which people don't notice pain. A man who couldn't drive outside the city limits of Phoenix without passing out and vomiting was told to put on his best suit, drive out on the flat desert to the city limits, and stop by the last telephone pole he thought he could reach. Then he was to start his car, accelerate to about 15 miles per hour, and then put it in neutral so that it would gently coast to a stop when he passed out. If he felt faint, he was to stop the car and get out and lie in the roadside ditch until he regained consciousness. When I first read these instructions a year ago, they made no sense to me at all. Yet, they are filled with non-verbal implication, and they were effective in freeing that man from his limitation. He drove many miles to a neighboring town before returning home. Pause now to reread those instructions and see how many nonverbal implications you can find. Wearing his best suit implies not vomiting and not lying in the ditch where it would get dirty. Having to put the car into neutral implies some control, or at least delay, in passing out. And passing out implies a delay in driving out of town, rather than its impossibility. Passing out also became the beginning of driving out of town, not the end of it. The man passed out repeatedly in the car, but Erickson makes no mention of his vomiting or lying in the ditch. A horribly fat girl, prudent and prudish, came in for a first session and said that even if she lost weight, she would still be about the ugliest girl in all creation. Erickson spent most of the hour-long therapy session handling and looking at a paperweight, only occasionally glancing up at her briefly. At the very end of the session he said to her, "I hope you will forgive me for what I have done. I haven't faced you. I know it's rude. I have played with this paperweight. It's been rather difficult to look at you. I'd rather not tell you, but since it is psychotherapeutic situation, I really ought to tell you. Perhaps you can find the explanation, but actually I have the very strong feeling that when you get reduced, at least everything I see about you, that's why I keep avoiding looking at you, indicates that when you get reduced, you will be even more sexually attractive, which is something that should not be discussed between you and me. Since in the context of therapy, Erickson shouldn't notice or talk about her sexual attractiveness, the fact that he did, along with his rudeness in not looking at her, playing with a paperweight instead, etc., all non-verbally implied the truth of what he said. If we summarize the essential ingredients in non-verbal implication, that will make it easier to learn to use it deliberately and systematically. Non-verbal implication, first, is provided by some element of the non-verbal context. Second, this context can be either real or imagined, hallucinated, but it must be vivid and compelling. Third, the context directly elicits the desired response or understanding. Fourth, is what Erickson often described as what you know, but you don't know that you know. A dependable involuntarily response that you aren't consciously aware of. If you review the previous examples, you will find these four elements in each one. Creating nonverbal implication. First, select the response or outcome that you want to elicit in the other person. Second, think of a context that would naturally and powerfully elicit that response or outcome. Third, create that context either A. behaviorally by your own actions, B. by tasking, instructing the person to do a certain set of actions in a specified context in the real world, C. vividly and compellingly in imagination, in or out of trance. Nonverbal contextual implication can also be combined with verbal implication and presupposition to elicit an even more powerful response. This will usually be the case with behavioral elicitation, as it was in Erickson's last example of the overweight girl. Creating an intense response as a therapeutic trauma. There is another important aspect of nonverbal implication, using it to elicit an intense response through drama and surprise in order to create a powerful prototype experience. Let's take another look at the last example of the horribly overweight girl. Erickson spent most of an hour playing with the paperweight and not looking at her, which she will certainly categorize as an aversive response to her ugliness. Then He apologizes for not looking at her, which she would undoubtedly interpret in the same way. Then he follows with 5 more statements that she will surely interpret as a response to her ugliness. I know it's rude. I've played with this paperweight. It has been rather difficult to look at you. I'd rather not tell you, but since it is a psychotherapeutic situation, I really ought to tell you. Each of these will further confirm and intensify her unpleasant conviction that Erickson finds her ugly. Then he suggests that she do what she is surely already doing. Perhaps you can find the explanation, an embedded command for her to confirm her interpretation yet again, followed by a Mandarin sentence with 3 more phrases that seem to confirm her ugliness. But actually, I have the very strong feeling that when you get reduced, at least everything I see about you, that's why I keep avoiding looking at you. Only after this hour-long setup does he deliver his alternative explanation, which offers her a surprising and much more pleasant way to categorize the entire situation. Erickson's embarrassment and reluctance to tell her further supports the implication that it is the truth. If Erickson had said something about her being sexually attractive without the hour-long non-verbal build-up and suspense, it would have had very little impact and would probably be categorized as yet another confirmation of her ugliness. Oh, he's just trying to make me feel better because I'm so ugly. Erickson often went to great lengths to create a dramatic and therefore impactful and memorable context for delivering a recategorization. A good drama requires a script, advanced preparation and rehearsal, so that its delivery is powerful, creating a prototype experience that will make a difference in someone's life. Cinnamon Face. A woman told Erickson about her 8-year-old daughter, Ruth, who hated everybody. A very miserable kind of girl. Erickson asked the mother what she thought made the girl hate herself and everybody else. The mother said, "Her face is a solid freckle, and the kids call her Freckles." Pause here and think about what you could do to resolve this girl's problem. It doesn't matter whether or not you think of something useful. Making an attempt will be helpful in expanding and adding to your choices. And I said, "All right, bring the girl in, even if you have to do so forcibly." So little Ruth came in just so defiant, ready for a fight, stalking in defiantly and scowled. I said, "You are a thief." She knew she wasn't. I said, "Oh yes, I know you steal. I have proof of it." And she denied that empathetically. "I have proof. I even know where you were when you stole." "You listen. I will tell you, and you will know you are guilty." You can't imagine her contempt for my statements. I said, "You are in the kitchen, standing on a kitchen table, reaching up to the cookie jar for cinnamon cookies, and some cinnamon fell on your face. Cinnamon face." First time Ruth knew freckles were cinnamon face. It completely reoriented her. All I did was reorient the situation. I didn't change it. I just reoriented it. And very few people know the importance of reorientation. Let's take a closer look at this example to see what made it so effective. Erikson got Ruth's complete attention by eliciting a full response of her hating. He did this not by matching rapport moves, but by deliberately giving her something else to hate, eliciting and amplifying her hatred. He did this by attacking not just her behavior, but her identity. "You are a thief," in contrast to "you stole something." Then he says, "I have proof," making the accusation even stronger. Then Erikson moves from past tense, "I even know where you were when you stole," to present tense, "You listen." Then he bridges from the present into the future. "I will tell you, and you will know you are guilty," orienting her into anticipating his future statements. Then he describes a past situation, but using present tense. "You are in the kitchen, standing on a kitchen table, reaching up to the cookie jar for cinnamon cookies." Using present tense, put her mentally into the situation he is describing as a present experience. All this preparation ensures that when he delivers the punchline, that resolves the drama and changes the meaning of everything that he has said. She will respond fully, as if cinnamon really had fallen on her face, creating a new prototype experience. Imagine how different and ineffectual it would have been if Erikson had flatly said, "Look, you think of your freckle face as ugly, but actually it looks like cinnamon." Her hatred of everyone, including Erikson, would have prevented her from even considering this recategorization. Bigfoot. A 14-year-old girl was becoming withdrawn and unsocial because she thought her feet were too large. Erikson arranged to do a physical examination of her mother at home, asking the girl to be present and assist him. I sent the girl for a teaspoon so I could look at mother's throat, and then I had the girl hold a flashlight as I was looking at mother's eyes and mother's throat. In getting the girl to do things, I asked her to wait so that she could stand right there in case I need her again. After completing a very thorough examination, and while Erikson was talking to the mother, he accidentally stepped back hard on the girl's bare toes, and she cried out in pain. I turned on her, and in a tone of absolute fury, I said to her, "If you wouldn't grow those things large enough for a man to see, I wouldn't be in this sort of situation." If you would grow those things large enough for a man to see, I wouldn't be in this sort of situation. There is so much packed into that moment of therapeutic trauma. The daughter's anxiety about her mother's health, her role in assisting the doctor, the pain in her toes, a respected older man shouting angrily at her, and a strange comment that presupposed that she could grow her feet larger, implying that they are small. Before Erickson left the house, the daughter asked the mother if she could go out to a show, and there was no further reclusive behavior. Erickson commented on this example as follows. "You see, the girl thought her feet were too large, and in the most beautiful, convincing way, I had forced upon her a compliment. If she would grow her feet large enough for a man to see, there was no way of rejecting that compliment. There was no way of disputing. I certainly hadn't been trying to make her feet better. There was nothing for the girl to do but accept the absolute proof that her feet were small. There's no other way. When you consider a lot of neurotic manifestations, some little traumatic thing will precipitate progressively larger and larger neurosis. Why can't you take the same attitude toward the correction of neurosis? Take something that is in essence a traumatic thing, correctly orient it, and just thrust it upon the person in such a fashion that they have to accept it, and deal with it, and incorporate it, the therapeutic trauma. We know a lot now about the chemistry of how the brain learns very quickly in states of intense traumatic arousal that create a limited focus of attention in the same way that hypnosis does. Drama can create this intense arousal for positive learning as well, without any overt hypnosis. Summary. Implication is communicating in a way that a listener is likely to infer a meaning based on their assumptions and worldview. The art of gracefully communicating something without saying it. Implication is a more general categorization of the meaning of a communication. Not just what do these words or actions communicate, but what does this communication mean at a more general logical level. Model of the world is a group of content-free patterns of communication that imply that the way someone views or understands the world is only one of many ways, opening the door to considering and trying out other understandings. The other kinds of implication are not content-free, because they elicit categorizations that do offer specific content. Verbal implication is based on presupposing that the world is divided into categorical opposites. Saying something about one half of this dichotomy creates the implication that the opposite is true of the other half of the dichotomy. Unlike presupposition, implication can't be found in the verbal statement alone, making it much subtler and ambiguous. This subtlety makes it powerful, but the ambiguity also opens a door to uncertainty, confusion, and misunderstanding. Contingent implication is created when one event is linked to another in someone's mind by either cause-effect or equivalence. When the first event occurs, that implies that the second has also occurred. This kind of implication is particularly useful when it is offered in the context of the unreal, pretend, or as-if category. Nonverbal or contextual implication is created by our natural response to a particular event or context. Since certain scopes of experience dependently elicit certain categorizations and responses, creating the scope non-verbally is all that is needed to create the implication and response. These different kinds of implication can be combined with careful planning to elicit an intense response or therapeutic trauma. That intense response creates a compelling memory that becomes the prototype for a new categorization, a new way of understanding and responding to what had been a frustrating problem. That prototype will quickly attract other examples to form a new category. Next, we will look more closely at how we internally process and use negation. Although it is an essential and useful communication skill, it also harbors traps for the unwary, because it can also be used in ways that result in confusion and misunderstanding. Learning is not compulsory, neither is survival. W. Edwards Deming. Chapter 2. Negation. Not this nor that. To think that I am not going to think of you anymore is still thinking of you. Let me then try not to think that I am not going to think of you. D. T. Suzuki. We use negation so often and so unconsciously that it is hard to realize what a remarkable and useful skill it is. When we don't like something in the present, we can think of it not existing as a first step toward imagining a more attractive alternative, and then figure out what we could do in order to attain that. I don't want this. I want its opposite. Now, could I get that? If I get wet in the rain, I think of being dry, and then figure out what I need to do to accomplish that. We do the same in regard to our future predictions. when they appear to be unsatisfactory. When we foresee unpleasantness, we ask ourselves, what could I do now to alter the future and make it more satisfying? We can also negate the past and wish that it hadn't happened. A useful first step toward thinking about what we would have preferred instead. Then we can apply that to the future, so that we can act more resourcefully in a similar future event. To get some idea of how important negation is, try doing without it for an hour or even 5 minutes. Put yourself in a context in which you are communicating with others, and try not saying no, none, never, nothing, without, can't, don't, won't, and all other words that express some form of no or not, including negations indicated by the prefixes I'm, in, on, a, I, these, etc. Notice that I couldn't give you the instruction for this experiment without using negations, and in the first part of this sentence I have used 3 negations: couldn't, without, and negations.